Hi. It wasn't the signature itself that tipped me off. Not entirely. I was updating our joint insurance policies after dinner, laptop open, skimming PDFs for renewal dates. Lauren had forwarded me the latest digital forms, standard stuff, auto, homeowners, valuables. We always co-signed. Always had. But this time, her signature looked different. A new flourish under the final letter. Stylized, polished. Not the casual loop I'd seen on 100 documents. Not the version she'd used when we bought our first house, or when we'd sat side by side signing the trust papers 2 summers ago. It was deliberate. Practiced. I opened an older PDF from the archive and compared. Same name. Different hand. A small thing, trivial, if taken alone. But in finance, details matter. If a ledger doesn't balance, you don't ignore the penny off. You find it. And there had been other things lately. Shifts. Last month, she'd mentioned her financial independence journey. Harmless words at first. She'd been attending virtual workshops, buying new budgeting software, following some influencer on wealth building. I'd encouraged it. We'd always shared financial responsibilities, but I liked seeing her take deeper interest. But then came the changed language. My accounts. My future planning. When I asked about a joint investment renewal, she brushed it off. I'm handling my side differently now. Just experimenting. I hadn't pushed. People grow. Marriage has seasons. Still, this new signature bothered me more than it should have. I closed the laptop and headed upstairs. That's when I heard it. From behind the cracked bathroom door, her phone on speaker, voice echoing. Ladies, test the financial loyalty of your man. Introduce scarcity. Observe his reactions to independence, control, and resource shifts. I stopped cold. These money tests reveal covert financial dominance. See if your partner supports your autonomy, or reacts to perceived loss of control. Heart thudding, I edged closer. The screen of her phone was face up on the bathroom counter. Podcast app open. Episode title in bold. Financial Empowerment. Reclaiming Wealth from Covertly Controlling Spouses. It felt surreal. Lauren humming lightly, bathwater sloshing, and this script playing beneath it. I stepped back before she noticed. My pulse hadn't come down by the time I reached my office. I sat, replayed what I'd heard. A test. Not a conversation. Not a shared journey. A unilateral evaluation, one I hadn't signed up for. And if that was true, how long had it been running? I didn't sleep much that night. I reviewed our joint financial apps quietly, double-checked account movements. Nothing glaring. No large withdrawals. But patterns don't start with floods. They start with drops. Morning came. Over coffee, she was cheerful. Light conversation about a new fitness subscription. Then casually, "Oh, I'm starting a new financial coaching program next week. Should be fun." "What kind?" I asked evenly. "Empowerment coaching. You know, building autonomy. I'll be doing it with some other women from the online group." Her tone was breezy. Practiced. "Sounds good," I said. I smiled. Measured. Inside, I was already planning. If this was a test, I needed to understand the rules, and who had written them. Later that day, I went back to the ledger. The insurance PDFs weren't the only documents that hadn't balanced. A quarterly inventory report we kept for insured valuables, jewelry, watches, collectibles, showed an item missing. A designer handbag, one we'd listed 2 years ago, now absent from the updated log. I hadn't noticed it missing from the closet. But now that I thought of it, when had I last seen her wear it? I checked further. The safe log showed a rare watch, my grandfather's, which we'd appraised together, had been signed out. No notation of return. I opened the bank app again. There, small withdrawals over the past 6 weeks, just below reporting thresholds. Not enough to scream theft, but consistent. Individually, none of these things could convict. But together? The pattern was taking shape. That night, while she texted in the living room, I messaged an old contact, a jeweler we trusted when we first insured our valuables. I asked a simple question. "Have you seen this model watch come through for appraisal or consignment recently?" The reply came an hour later. "Yes, came through last week. Sold on consignment. Recognized the piece. Hope everything's alright?" I stared at the message. This wasn't a test. Not anymore. This was a financial shift. Deliberate. Premeditated. And now I was very much awake. The next morning, my mind was already in motion. Lauren had left early for a Pilates class. I used the time. First, I went back to the safe. We rarely touched it these days, kept mostly for legacy items and backups. But now, I inventoried everything with cold precision. 2 more discrepancies surfaced. A pair of diamond stud earrings, originally appraised at $14,000, gone. The appraisal certificate was still filed neatly, as if nothing had changed. The compartment where they'd been, empty. Another watch, a mid-tier collector's piece she'd gifted me years ago, missing. I checked the old photos we'd used for insurance, confirmed. Gone. Lauren had removed the items without logging them, and she hadn't told me. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I pulled up our cloud-stored bank statements, one of the few things she hadn't fully privatized yet. While she'd started referring to her accounts, we still had shared auto transfers in place for household expenses. That gave me visibility into certain patterns. The same pattern repeated. A string of sub-$5,000 cash withdrawals, spaced just enough to avoid bank alerts. 6 transactions over 3 weeks. The totals aligned with typical down payments for private sales or high-value consignment deals. It wasn't random spending. It was structured movement. I needed more context. I reached out to another discreet contact, a former colleague who now ran compliance checks for private wealth managers. I didn't give details, just asked if they could quietly watch for movements involving Lauren's name in certain consignment channels. Then I turned to her digital trail. We shared a home office space. She kept her personal laptop separate, but had left the family iPad logged into her email. I wasn't about to snoop, but open screens leave open clues. In her inbox, one subject line caught my eye. Welcome to the Reclaiming Financial Autonomy Masterclass, Week 1 Orientation. I opened the confirmation email. The program was run by an influencer I recognized, sleek branding, thousands of followers, known for pushing exit strategies under the veneer of empowerment. A 6-week intensive. Modules on asset separation, private wealth management, legal positioning. This wasn't a budgeting class. It was preparation. That night, we ate dinner together. Chicken piccata. Wine. She was vibrant, talkative, told me about her day, asked about mine. No mention of jewelry. No mention of sales. When I asked casually about her new course, she smiled. It's fantastic. Really eye-opening. Makes you think about what's truly yours. I nodded. Sounds valuable. Inside, the temperature was dropping by the minute. I received a text from the jeweler 2 days later. Tracking request confirmed. 3 more pieces from your insurance inventory have been sold in the past month, all through private channels. He attached transaction dates. They matched, almost to the day, with the cash withdrawals I'd logged. Lauren wasn't testing boundaries anymore. She was building a parallel cash position, off the books. I didn't let it show. Each morning, we had coffee together. Each evening, she kissed me goodnight. The small routines remained. But now every word, every glance was a line in a ledger I was tracking meticulously. She had started a game. I intended to finish it. By the start of the 2nd week, the pattern was undeniable. Lauren was liquidating, quietly, methodically. The consignment reports showed 4 major items sold now, and the withdrawal pattern continued, a near-perfect match between asset movement and cash positioning. This wasn't erratic spending. This was strategy. That Tuesday, she left early for a weekend retreat, organized by her empowerment group, 3 nights away, supposedly full of wellness workshops and financial boundary setting. Before she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "Don't get too lonely." I watched her drive away. Then I got to work. First, I checked her desktop. She was logged out. No surprise. But on the shared calendar app, a clue remained, an event block for private wealth session, one-on-one. No other details. I cross-referenced her inbox again on the family iPad. Buried in a promotions tab was a second email, an invite to a private webinar run by the same influencer. Title: Exit Blueprint, Protecting What's Yours Before the Split. There it was. Not subtle. Not hypothetical. I clicked through to the event platform, public enough to view session outlines. The module list was blunt. Isolating financial identity. Restructuring accounts in advance of divorce. Hidden asset strategies. Legal prepositioning against controlling spouses. I sat back in my chair, cold settling into my gut. Lauren wasn't testing anymore. She was preparing for separation, with tactical intent, and she hadn't said a word. I checked the latest bank activity again. 2 fresh cash withdrawals, timed right before her retreat. The amounts were rising, but then a deeper layer emerged. In one transfer log, I spotted a new payee name, a private wealth advisor, $5,000 labeled as consultation fee. The name rang a bell. I dug into old records. There it was. He used to be our joint advisor, back when we first built our estate plan. A boutique consultant with deep divorce side expertise. He'd handled our couples sessions 3 years ago, when we'd been setting up trusts and long-term financial planning. Back then, he was neutral, professional. Now, he was billing her privately. I researched him further. His divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, public record. Since then, he'd repositioned his practice toward empowered wealth transition for women. It didn't take much cross-referencing to confirm he was closely tied to the influencer running Lauren's course. They'd collaborated on seminars, pushed similar strategies, and recent social posts showed them together at private mixers, smiling, close. I wasn't looking at a neutral advisor anymore. I was looking at someone she'd grown personally entangled with. The realization landed with a cold, heavy weight. It explained everything: the shift in tone, the secrecy, the sudden strategic withdrawal of assets. Lauren wasn't just leaving. She was being coached to quietly cut me out of our financial life before making her move, guided by someone who knew our entire original structure, and someone she was now intimately involved with. That night, I poured a scotch and sat alone in my study. Memories surfaced unbidden. Our first year of marriage, nights eating takeout on moving boxes while we mapped out our savings goals on scrap paper. Our first joint account deposit. The day we finally cleared her student loans together and celebrated with cheap champagne. Every financial milestone had been a shared climb, brick by brick. Now she was pulling it apart stone by stone, behind my back. Not for empowerment, for erasure. I stared out the window for a long time that night. By the time dawn crept in, I'd made my decision. No confrontation. Not yet. I would document, prepare. And when the moment came, I would not be the one caught unbalanced. I didn't rush. Emotional decisions are expensive. Lauren was making them now, disguised as empowerment. I wouldn't repeat her mistake. My first step wasn't invasive monitoring or underhanded tactics. It was precision. I contacted my corporate tax attorney, Amanda, a sharp mind I trusted from my business side. No emotional entanglements. I presented the facts plainly: joint asset discrepancies, irregular cash movements, and connections between Lauren's advisor and the influencer. Amanda's advice was immediate. You need documentation. Clean. Forensically sound. If this heads where it looks like it's heading, you'll need to be prepared before the first legal shot is fired. She connected me with a forensic accountant, quiet, discreet, not to spy, but to track, to document. The wheels began turning. 2 days later, confirmation came in. The forensic review of our joint accounts, combined with the jeweler's reports, showed a clear financial drift. Nearly $60,000 in unreported asset value already moved, liquidated, or converted into untraceable cash positions, and the trail led, again and again, to the private wealth advisor. His name appeared not just in Lauren's transaction records, but in background activity linked to several of the influencer's past clients, women who had filed for divorce after attending similar programs. He wasn't just an advisor, he was the architect. I mapped the timeline. Week 1. Empowerment podcast appears. Week 2, course enrollment, private sessions begin. Week 3, asset movement starts. Week 4, affairs surfaces behind professional meetings. Lauren hadn't devised this plan alone. She'd been led, step by step, through a script designed to strip financial positioning before filing. And the advisor? A man who already knew the architecture of our joint estate plan, who had once sat at our table, helping us build it. Now weaponizing that knowledge against me. I moved my own pieces next. First, I repositioned vulnerable joint assets, perfectly legal, within my managerial rights. Ensured business cash flow was siloed. Retained sole counsel on our corporate trusts. Next, I set a deliberate bait. An old property we'd been meaning to refinance. A commercial space we still held jointly. I invited Lauren to co-sign on the new loan structure. Presented it as a financial optimization. Something she'd normally have jumped at. She agreed, careful, smiling, likely calculating her own angles. But the signing meeting wasn't private. I arranged for an independent CPA, one Amanda trusted, to be present under the pretense of providing updated portfolio overviews. At the signing, the cracks widened. When asked about the missing items from our asset sheet, Lauren hesitated, offered vague answers, couldn't explain why certain valuations had decreased. The CPA noted everything, on record, neutrally, professionally. By the end of the session, I saw it in her eyes, flickers of uncertainty. She wasn't sure how much I knew. Good. That was the position I wanted her in. Back home, the false normalcy continued. She cooked dinner, chatted about mundane things, sent affectionate texts. I replied calmly, measured, maintaining the mask. Inside, my path was set. The balance had shifted. She thought she was ahead in the game. But games are about timing. And I was just getting started. The morning after the CPA meeting, Lauren was bright, breezy. She handed me a coffee, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted anything from the farmer's market. Her tone was effortless, as if the thin cracks that had surfaced yesterday weren't spiderwebbing beneath her mask. I thanked her, smiled, watched her drive away. As soon as the garage door closed, I called Amanda. We met that afternoon in her office. No virtual calls. Privacy mattered now. Amanda had reviewed the CPA's notes. Her verdict was crisp. She's overcommit. Her timeline doesn't match her asset shifts anymore. The longer you keep this controlled, the more leverage you'll have when the hammer drops. I asked if it was time to move directly. Soon, she said. But first, we tighten the record. I'm bringing in another forensic to parallel the first report. Different team. Independent path. It'll stand up to any challenge. I nodded. And her advisor? Amanda's brow lifted slightly. That one's interesting. We're already seeing signs of fiduciary breach. He's not just consulting, he's participating in active extraction. And his previous role in your joint planning? That's a serious conflict. She slid a document across the table. We'll be reporting him for preliminary misconduct. Quietly. Just in case he gets ideas about accelerating her timeline. I signed the authorization. That night, Lauren suggested we order in Thai, one of our old staples. We ate on the patio under string lights. She poured the wine, chatted about small things, her new fitness goals, and articles she'd read on estate planning for modern partnerships. I matched her tone, word for word. Inside, every exchange sharpened my focus. 2 days later, Amanda called. The parallel forensic review was already yielding returns. Cross-account traces showed small wires from Lauren's personal growth fund into the advisor's shell entity, positioned as consulting services, but clearly structured to disguise co-managed asset positioning. In short, they were building a private reserve, off the books, off my radar. Until now. I moved the next piece onto the board. I sent Lauren an email proposing a full review of our long-term estate strategy, framed as a positive planning session. Let's align on our future structure before year-end, she replied within the hour. Great idea! I've been wanting to revisit some things. Perfect. What she didn't know, the session would be attended by our former family attorney, now retained solely by me, a quiet professional. He'd reviewed the full dossier Amanda and I had built, the asset extraction, the affair link, the fiduciary misconduct. He would be there not to advise her, but to witness. The night before the meeting, Lauren was almost radiant. She cooked carbonara, one of her signatures, poured a burrolo we'd been saving. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table. I feel like we're finally coming into alignment again. It's good, right? I looked at her hand, then into her eyes. It's very good to be aligned, I said. She smiled, content. I sipped my wine steady. The mask held. But in my chest, something had hardened past the point of no return. This wasn't alignment. It was prelude. Later that night, I stood alone in my office. The house was quiet. Lauren had gone to bed early, claiming she wanted to be fresh for our future planning meeting. I looked at the framed photo on the bookshelf, us on the day we closed on this house. Smiling, arms around each other, full of plans. Now, half of those plans were being siphoned off behind my back. I closed the door, opened the secure folder on my laptop. Tomorrow, the ledger would tip, and Lauren would see exactly who was still balancing the books. We met in the conference room at Amanda's office. Neutral ground, professional. Lauren arrived on time, perfectly composed. She wore a tailored suit, a shade too formal for what she thought was a casual planning session. A signal, perhaps, that she was bracing for some kind of play. She greeted Amanda warmly, then glanced at the unfamiliar man seated beside me. I introduced him simply. "This is David. He's here to consult on the legal structuring side." Lauren's eyes flickered for a half-second, then the smile returned. "Of course. Makes sense to have everyone aligned." She settled in. The game had begun. Amanda opened with small talk, updates on estate law, new recommendations for tax efficiency. Lauren nodded along, engaged, relaxed, then we shifted to the asset review. That's where the tempo changed. Amanda slid a fresh portfolio summary across the table, prepared by our parallel forensic team. Lauren flipped through it casually at first, then slower, frowning slightly. The first discrepancy was small, a set of missing jewelry appraisals. Amanda asked, "Could you help us update the records? These items are no longer in the asset sheet." Lauren hesitated, smiled thinly. "I think I moved some of those for safekeeping. I can check." No commitment, no specifics. David made a quiet note. Next came the transaction history: withdrawals, asset sales, wires. Amanda's tone remained neutral. "We noticed several asset movements correlating with these transfers. Could you clarify their purpose for the record?" Lauren's fingers tensed on the page. "Personal diversification. It's part of my financial journey." Amanda didn't blink. "Of course. However, some of these transactions involve accounts held jointly or funds originating from shared assets. Transparency is essential," David added softly, "and some involve entities with potential conflict of interest, given prior advisory relationships." Lauren's color shifted slightly, a quick inhale. Still, she held the mask. "I'm entitled to explore my financial autonomy." Then came the final stack. Amanda laid out the compiled evidence: jewelry resale records, traced through consignment channels, cross-account wires into her advisor's shell entity, the advisor's conflict disclosures linked to his prior role, the public record of his current legal scrutiny, fiduciary misconduct under SEC review, initiated by Amanda's quiet filing the previous week. Lauren's hands stopped moving. For the first time, her mask cracked. "Where did you get all this?" she asked, voice tighter now. I met her gaze. Steady. Calm. "You started a test you thought you controlled. You just failed the audit." Silence filled the room. Lauren looked down, then up, eyes darting, calculating. Her throat worked once, twice. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No denial would hold now. The ledger was laid bare. Amanda closed her folder. "Given these findings, we'll be formalizing adjustments to the estate structure. You'll receive documentation shortly. I recommend independent counsel." David's tone was clinical. "And as these transactions may trigger legal review, transparency moving forward will be in your best interest." Lauren sat frozen. Her empowerment journey had just collided with professional consequence. The meeting ended without theatrics. No raised voices. No dramatic exits. Lauren gathered her things in silence, paused by the door, looked at me, something between betrayal and desperation in her eyes. I held her gaze. No malice, no pity, just finality. She left without another word. Later that night, back home, the house felt eerily quiet. Lauren didn't return. No message. No call. I poured a scotch. Sat in the dark study. The emotional weight was real, heavier than I'd anticipated. Even when you expect betrayal, seeing it laid bare costs something. Memories rose again. Old plans, shared goals, the life we'd built brick by brick, now dismantled. But the ledger was balanced, and I was still standing. The formal filings began 3 days after the confrontation. Lauren's first move was predictable. Her newly retained attorney filed for divorce, citing vague, irreconcilable differences. No mention of the financial misconduct, of course. But Amanda was ready. We counterfiled immediately. Documented financial fraud, premeditated asset concealment, and breach of fiduciary trust via her advisor. Our forensic records were bulletproof. Then the first external fallout landed. The advisor, already under SEC review thanks to Amanda's filing, received formal notice of temporary suspension. His private consultancy froze operations pending investigation. Word traveled fast in their circle. The influencer behind Lauren's empowerment course tried to distance herself publicly, but it was too late. Within a week, chatter surfaced in online groups, other spouses reviewing financial discrepancies, attorneys beginning parallel audits. What began as Lauren's private money test had triggered a quiet legal wave through their network. The house emptied quickly after the papers were served. Lauren moved into a temporary rental across town. We communicated only through counsel, clinical, necessary. I took the time to restructure what mattered. Business assets fully shielded. Corporate trusts revised. Personal accounts segmented clean. Remaining joint properties, locked until final settlement. It wasn't about revenge. It was about preservation, stability. Social circles fractured, predictably. Some mutual friends tried to stay neutral. Others disappeared entirely, drawn into the empowerment narrative or unwilling to face the legal mess beneath it. That was fine. You learn who's solid when the tide goes out. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle. It was the silence of the evenings that followed. The routines we'd built, dinners, shared mornings, casual laughter, hadn't vanished all at once. They echoed in the empty spaces. You don't erase years of trust overnight, even when trust has already been broken. But you do endure it. One deliberate breath at a time. Thank you for watching. Bye.